Visual Basic. Visual Basic. Hi all. We're going to do some Visual Basic. Today we're going to go over functions. We've done functions a little bit, but we're going to go into a little bit more detail. Functions are just blocks of code. Just like when you write a letter, you write paragraphs. Well, it's the same thing with functions. You put your code into functions. The old-fashioned way was they just write line after line of code. They didn't really break things up. It's actually in the books as spaghetti code. So there's still a lot of spaghetti code out there. Don't be surprised if you get a job where you're cleaning up the old spaghetti code and putting it into functions. So this first one is just an example of how we've been doing it. Let's run it just so we can get started here. Okay, so we'll do this with a console application just because it's easier to see what's going on inside the code. We created a VB folder on C:, in the previous videos. We'll go ahead and stick with that. So you can see here, this part here is our main function. VB calls them subs, but usually in programming they call them functions. Sometimes you'll hear them called procedures. So functions, subs, procedures, three words that mean the same thing. Kinda. So in general, most people just call them functions. You're writing a function. This outer part here is a module, and that's just another way to block things off. You create modules, then you put functions inside your modules. So we'll talk more about those later, but right now I just want to go over functions. So most programming languages will start with a main function, and then your main function kind of controls your whole program. So you'll see what I'm talking about as we move through the examples here. So just to get things started, this is how we usually do it. We just stick everything inside main, compile it, then we have to run it. We can run it from here. It opens a command prompt and runs the application. So we just put all of our code inside main, which, that's okay for our examples, but in the real world, you're not supposed to program like that. Okay, so in example 2, we create another function. Okay, and then from main function, from our main function, we run function 2. So you can see here, this is main. This starts main, this ends main, and we only have one line of code inside main. That guy. That's a function call. This is a comment. This is a function call. That's how we run a function. we call it. We call function 2. This is the name of the function, so it knows to come down here and run the function by the same name. Now normally when you see these guys here, that's how you know it's a function name. So like I'm seeing this and I say, okay, main must be a function because I'm seeing this. Function 2 must be a function name because I'm seeing this. Function 2 here, that must be the function name because I'm seeing this here. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this and we'll see what this does. So you can see this whole thing goes inside our module. Okay, so just so you can see how this is built, we'll just take the function call here and we'll paste that into here. That's nice how Visual Basic does our indenting for us. Indenting is usually optional. You know, if you want to, you could write all these programs on one straight line. You know, they don't have to be spaced out. But Visual Basic just makes it easier by taking care of the indenting. Usually 4 spaces is common. You know, 3 spaces isn't enough. See, like if I go 1, 2, 3, it's kind of hard to see it indented when you get a lot on the page. If you go 5, it's usually too much, because then as you get more code on the page, it's running off the side of the page. So as a common practice, 4 spaces is usually what's used. And then we create another function here, and we'll just grab our function and we'll paste that right into here. So now you can see we have 2 functions inside of our module. We'll build it and then we'll run it. So you can see we get the same printout. Number is 1, but we called it from here. It ran from function 2. Okay, so just to run through this, we have 2 functions inside of our module. Main function, function 2. You can name these functions just about anything you want. It doesn't have to be function 2. You know. There might be a few restrictions, you know, but you can pretty much will name them anything. So main function, function 2, both functions inside of our module. So main function does the function call and runs function 2. Function 2 creates a number as an integer, makes it equal to 1. Then we do a console.write line. It says number is, adds my number to the end of the line, and that's how we get this line here. Number is 1. Okay, so that's a function. Okay, so number 3 is the same thing, but we're adding another function. We have function 2 here, and then we have function 3 here. Don't let it mess you up. It's the same thing. We're just adding another one. Okay, so now we have 2 function calls. We're going to call function 2, comes down here, runs function 2. Then it comes back here, says okay, I'm done, moves down to the next line, does function 3 call, comes down here, runs function 3, then it comes back here again and says hey, I'm done, and then it comes down here and does the right line. Okay, so let's just go ahead and copy this whole thing in. Build it, and then we'll run it. Okay, so you see we have main function, function 2, function 3. So inside main we did function called 2. Came down here, ran function 2. Create my number as an integer and made it equal to 2. Then we did the right line and it said hello from function. It took the number 2 and stuck it on the end of the line. That's how we get the 2. Came down here, hit the end sub, came back up here, did the function 3 call, came down here, ran function 3, created my number as an integer, made it equal to 3, did a right line, and it said hello from function. Hello from function here. That's how we get this line here. Then it took this 3 and it stuck it on the end of the line here. Then it came back to here, did the console.write line, and wrote all done to the screen. So you can see here, just by adding a few lines of code, these things get pretty big, pretty fast. It's just something you got to print it out on a piece of paper, fold it up, stick it in your pocket, carry it around with you. You get some spare time, take it out, study it. Okay, so on number 3, what I wanted you to notice is we created my number in function 2, and we created my number in function 3. Okay, those are totally different numbers. What that's called is a local variable. My number is a local variable to function 2. My number here is a local variable to function 3. There's no conflict between this one and this one, because this one is inside this function, this one is inside this function. As soon as we end the sub here, that integer goes away, and same here. As soon as we leave this function here, this number goes away. Here, let's try that. Let's say we'll try to write that integer from main. So if we compile this, So you can see right here off the bat, it's saying, hey, I don't know what that number is. It's giving us that red line. Main can't see my number. It's out of scope. SCOPE. My number here is in scope of function 2. My number here is in the scope of function 3. We can tell here that this won't compile. So you can see here it didn't even compile because it can tell there's an error. Okay, so that's kind of getting tricky there, getting into the scope thing. Okay, so number 4, what we do is we pass a number from one function to another function.